Welcome to Atlanta Business and Commercial Real Estate Law Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome into an all-new episode of the Atlanta Business and Commercial Real Estate Law Podcast with attorney Mark Battleson of Battleson Law, LLC. I am your host, Mike Leon. Mark here brings over 3 decades of experience all across business law, commercial real estate, and deal structuring with a background that includes both legal work and hands-on business roles. Today's episode, we're going to take a practical look at commercial real estate loans, refinancing decisions, and what investors should understand before stepping into single-family or even multifamily development projects. Mark, it's good to see you as always. So when someone is looking at a commercial real estate loan for the first time, maybe they're new to this process, but what are some of the basic concepts that they need to understand before they get a little too, far in the weeds with a lender?
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. Obviously, there's loans are the oil that helps grease the project forward. But if you're going to end up doing any kind of a project, you've got a lot of considerations with regard to both underwriting, land acquisition. If it's a true raw greenfield development, greenfield means that nothing's ever been built there before, or a redevelopment. And you've got zoning considerations. You've got basically design and costing out and making sure you're going to have a profitable, assuming this is a for-profit, not just, personal residence being built. But that really, a personal residence isn't a commercial real estate loan. So basically, there's a lot of logistics that goes into even getting to a point where you could apply for a loan, because you need to know what the economics are, the underwriting, the zoning, and basically what are called the entitlements, which somewhat relates to zoning, but more toward permitting and environmental and things like that. So there's a lot of legwork that goes in, a lot of sunk costs that go in before you get to a point where you're truly making or shopping the project to multiple lenders in order to try to qualify for and get the best pricing as in interest rates, as well as proceeds and other non-economic terms related to the loan.
Yeah. Well, you kind of mentioned there about residential mortgages, how this is like very different in commercial loans. So in that regard, what kind of usually surprises people when they make the jump to get into the commercial?
Well, yeah. So there's 2 types of residential loans, I guess. There's the commercial, the single primary residence, single family loans under 4 units. Those are typically called conforming loans, or it may be under an FHA type program. Banks can lend those directly, and they can either hold them for their balance sheet or sell them off into a mortgage-backed security. But commercial loans, where it's a for-profit exit, where you're building something to then either sell it or refinance it into a long-term hold. Construction loans are going to be a little bit different. They're going to be primarily floating rate loans that have a term that is anywhere from 2 to 3 years, depending on what the length of time for the construction is. And then ultimately, if it's a rental property, getting it leased up to the point where it can support a permanent loan. So, when a property is not making money, you cannot get a refinance on it unless you just happen to be super rich or a heavy balance sheet company with a lot of cash flow. At construction loan maturity at 2 or 3 years, you're going to need to refinance, and you need to make sure you've got enough time in order to get the business or get the building occupied sufficiently with paying rent or paying tenants, so that you can then have the cash flow to support a permanent loan, which would most likely be fixed rate, but there are some floating rate loans and swaps and things like that can go on a commercial loan.
Mark, is that the only thing that investors should kind of slow down and evaluate before deciding whether a refinance will help them, or are there other things?
Well, yeah, I guess this isn't really, I guess leading into it, first there's a construction loan for a development deal. If the deal is already built under a construction loan, and then you need to refinance out of that because it is new construction, or an acquisition with a heavy rehabilitation, which is kind of like a construction project, but oftentimes simpler, as long as you're not doing like a complete gut of 100-year-old building and having to put in a lot of I mean, a lot of times, I mean, there may be a historical facade that you can't tear down, in which case it's even more expensive than building new construction. But as far as refinancing, let's say you already own the property, and then you've got a loan maturity, whether that's a construction loan or just a pre-existing acquisition loan. And then some people will acquire a property with a bridge loan, which is kind of like a construction loan. It's a shorter term, and it's with the intent of buying a property that needs some kind of operational or physical improvement, and then ultimately getting it to a point where it can support a permanent loan. And I keep using the term support a permanent loan. Permanent loans are certainly collateralized by the same real estate that a bridge loan or a construction loan would be, but the permanent loan is designed to be underwritten at a lower rate, longer term, and based upon the cash flow of the property that is stabilized. So, bridge loans and construction loans are trying to get a property up to stabilized net operating income, and which is basically just EBITDA or profit before taking into account the debt and any depreciation. And ultimately, you're going to want to get the property to a point where it can provide a net operating income that provides a debt service coverage ratio of 1.2, 1.25, which basically there's enough net operating income from the property coming in from tenants after expenses that can more than pay the debt service on the loan, which is interest and principal generally. Sometimes there's interest only periods.
Mark, let me ask you, because you mentioned the phrase about a project maybe struggling, right? Or at least like you mentioned about the tenant occupancy and being able to at least be on that path to profitability. So if the project starts to kind of struggle, the lenders, and you correct me if I'm wrong, maybe they want to do some kind of restructuring, work out some type of deal. What does that conversation kind of look like in real life?
Yeah. So ultimately, if you're paying, like you buy a property, lenders, a institutional type loan or sophisticated lender, or even some smaller banks, they loan a lot on commercial real estate, and they're stressed right now, and so they technically probably do have covenants that where they can take a look at the books and make sure that there's a proper debt coverage ratio, et cetera. Usually, if people are paying though and are they aren't in default, it's kind of like let sleeping dogs lie for a lot of banks. I mean, unless there's just some calamity, such as a fire or something, if it's a Publix anchored shopping center or Safeway or other large grocer, and that grocer leaves, then it'll be a covenant that probably would trigger a default or some kind of a workout. So long way to get to the point of your question about, discussing a workout with a lender is, if you're paying, it's probably not as big of a deal, albeit there can be breaches of covenants within those loans. The second and banks and other lenders, unless they're very predatory, and when I say predatory, it just means loan to own. Some lenders that are hard money lenders or other higher risk bridge lenders, they may loan 60 cents on the dollar on it, and they would be very happy if there was a default where they could come swoop in and try to take the property. But most lenders, they don't want to own the real estate. They're in the business of loaning out money and getting paid back. And so if you can't pay them, their options, if granted by the lender, and again, it takes cooperation. There's an incentive for the bank to not take the lender to not take the real estate back because they don't know it. They don't want to operate it. They're there to make money on their money. And if you come to them with a logical plan that explains the problem, explains the capital needs in order to fix the problem, explains the amount of time needed in order to fix the problem, and that it is actually feasible to fix the problem, whatever that might be, lost tenant, insurance claim that is being delayed, whatever it is, in order you may be able to get a forbearance, which would basically be deferring payments in order to give you breathing room and then get back on track with a catch up. I mean, they're not going to just give you money away unless you happen to be super lucky. So you need to be organized. You need to be able to present I get people from an SBA loans where they have some real estate components to them sometimes, and they just expect that it's a free lunch because of all the COVID giveaways, and it ain't. It is not a free lunch. These people, especially, just a regular SBA loan, that is not a COVID relief loan. I mean, that's a straight up bank that's loaning that and just happens to have SBA backing. And um, they expect to get paid back. So, you need to be organized and show that you can actually fix the problem that was either third party created, act of God created, or possibly your own mismanagement created, and tell them how you're going to right the ship. And it might mean that you got to put in more money as well.
Yeah. Mark, as I hear you talk, do you have any examples, obviously without going into the intricate details, that you can kind of share of like a situation, a financing issue, and then some type of workout happened, how the deal kind of ended up playing out? Anything you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, so I was actually not acting as a lawyer during the Lehman Brothers crisis. So this was, there are hundreds of thousands of stories, I assume, with that period of time. And that was an extreme situation where, it was a global real estate crash, but I mean, highly concentrated in the United States. And so there were tons of small bank failures as well as large bank failures. And the basic premise is always you can go one of two ways with a lender when they're stressed, whether the bank is stressed or whether you're stressed. You can put up roadblocks and try to threaten, or you can threaten bankruptcy, and that can very likely trigger, even if you have a non-recourse loan, you could end up having a recourse triggered on what are called bad boy carve-outs, where it's basically, hey, you can have a non-recourse loan to where it's just the property that can get taken from you if you're in default. But if you go to the extreme and file for bankruptcy or do other things that threaten the collateral from the access to the collateral for your lender or the ability to liquidate it, you can end up having personal liability. So in looking at, a good example is, I bought 18 lots from as a bank brokered short sale from Bank of America, and then built townhomes on it back in 2011. So that was a Bank of America loan that the developer had two developments going on, primarily, relatively large single family and townhouse real estate developments. One loan was, I don't know, 70 million. And then he had this smaller project that had 18 remaining units, is what I bought. And so the bank had to work with the lender, the bank had to work with the developer to basically do what's called a bank brokered short sale of these properties. And so I got to come in and scoop up 18 lots for basically negative land value when you counted all the curbs and gutters and other infrastructure that was already built on it. And in order to work those kinds of projects out, you just need to keep your head and be honest and fair with the lender. They're generally not personal about this, and it's very emotional for the borrower, and because of the threats to their livelihood as well as maybe their own home, and they've got marital issues as a result of it. So, all those stresses go into it, and it's like, just if you're going to deal with your lender, you better be a professional and have somebody help you navigate it that to where you aren't wasting their time, because they're going to be very short on patience with you if you're in default.
Yeah. Mark, can I ask you about that? Because those small investors, a lot of times they start with these single family, these small multifamily projects. You just mentioned there about the differences with the budget. So like, how else do they compare to the larger developments? And what are some of the major pieces that you would advise people to understand before they commit to a project like you were able to undertake?
Yeah, and so I've done I used to work for large developers, and so it's a very different ballgame. So bringing it down to Main Street, which is kind of what I do now. I mean, I don't do I'm a one man shop, so I don't do $200 million deals anymore. But the let's say there's a lot of fix and flip people, and where they're trying to buy a house, maybe even just transfer it over to another buyer, do some kind of improvement on it and flip it. That market's gotten really tough, but people will end up doing what's called a hard money loan with a lot of that. And a hard money loan is amongst the most dangerous and most, I guess, and again, I use the term predatory. It's, hey, if you're going to play in the world of borrowing money from people, you need to understand your terms and the costs associated with it. And if you can't get a conventional bank loan, or some of their traditional single family financing, and you're going to go with a hard money lender, you just need to know that you're going to have short timelines and expensive money. And if you don't meet your timelines, and because you're not organized, or you have a hiccup with your contractor because you don't know how to manage your contractor, unless you're self-performing as your contractor, you're taking a huge risk. And I get calls from people all the time that they may not even have a personal guarantee on these loans, but they only borrowed 70% of project costs, and 6 months later, all of a sudden, they're getting the property snagged from under them. So if he's paid $500,000 for in total borrowing and your own equity in the property, and then you go into default, you're going to lose 150 grand if you put 30% on it. And so you need to be very careful about it, because getting bridge financing after that to take out your original hard money loan, it's just compounding, and it's going to get more expensive, and the property is only going to be so valuable. So you get one bite at the apple. I mean, refinancing out of a hard money loan, you better have completed your job. And if it's just a fix and flip that you're trying to sell, you better sell that thing, or you're going to be left holding the bag on very expensive money and likely lose the deal if you hit a maturity wall where, basically it's a 6-month loan and you haven't sold the house. You can, even if you're paying on the interest and principal, whatever the terms are, if you hit a maturity date, they can tell you that we got to get paid off in full. And if not, then they can foreclose upon you.
Yeah. Mark, as we wrap here, someone's trying to make a smart decision right now about a loan. What's one area you would advise them that they should take a little bit more time with, so they're not stuck with the decision that hurts them later on?
Yeah, well, I mean, to the extent you've got the ability to shop it around, I mean, that's a great exercise in order to determine what the best terms are that you can get. But you got to know what to ask for, and you got to know exactly how your property underwrites, whether that's a new construction that you're just looking to sell as a builder, whether that's you're a developer of multiple lots, and then you're looking for kind of a more revolving construction facility to where you build 3 or 4 houses at a time, and then you roll the profits over and do another one. And you need to understand the landscape. And if you're ignorant to it, certainly do your own research, and then you got to underwrite your property, as I said at the beginning of this podcast. You got to understand every aspect of what you're doing. So many people come into these projects, especially on the, just starting out, they get some backing from somebody, and they just make mistakes out of ignorance. It's not even lack of hustle. It's not lack of intelligence. It's ignorance. And if you don't understand exactly how to go about packaging up a good presentation for a lender to then shop it to get the best terms, and then negotiate. And when I say best terms, just the economics, interest and loan proceeds, how much money you can get for your project. But then you got all the details of the legal, personal guarantees, construction guarantees, such as what's called a completion guarantee. You got to finish the project. So if you go over budget and you don't have any other money and you have a completion guarantee, you could be personally liable for it because you can't finish the project. And then, there's maturity. Basically, there's all kinds of ways to default. So the long story short is, even single family lending, it's not amateur. And so it's one of those things where there's loan terms, and then there's project underwriting. And, even if it's for your own personal residence and you're working with a contractor, I would never do a deal without a guaranteed maximum price contract from the contractor, because you're just too much at risk. Right. It's just, you gotta, there's so many things on here. I could talk for literally 30 hours on all the issues that are going to come up, but yeah. I guess, the final message is just, you better be prepared if you're going to play in this game, because there's a lot of consequences. Even if a non-recourse loan is there may be bad boy carve-outs. And if you behave badly and don't let the lender foreclose without going through a bunch of legal, you can find yourself personally liable.
Yeah. Mark, thank you for the time, the insights, breaking this all down as always. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That's it for today's episode of the Atlanta Business and Commercial Real Estate Law Podcast. Look, if you want to learn more, you need help reviewing a loan, I know somebody that can help you with that. Visit battlesonlaw.com to connect with Mark. Don't forget, before you go, like, subscribe, leave a review, comment, share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Mike Leon. We will see everybody next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.